on the recording, the mic level at the top, what are the volume levels that you typically, the recording levels, what numbers should I be aiming to hit based on
For
adjusting them?
yeah, it does tend to jump around because the
Yep.
Hangout may actually adjust it for you. Mine is currently set at 0.31, but it's just got to do with the gain on your mic, what it's currently set to, the
Right,
hardware
so
gain as well as.
I guess I'm looking at
Yeah.
Audacity now, and I see the bouncing green bar, and it
Mm.
fluctuates for me when I'm not talking, down to 50. When I'm talking, it's fluctuating between 36 and 12. Is that? I guess I'm wondering if that's a level that I can benchmark against where you guys are.
36 and 12.
That's a pretty good strong signal. Mine's around there too when I speak.
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay.
That's fine. Looks like we are good to go. We should have a nice high fidelity recording for this show, you guys.
Yay.
Chill, what about you? You've had a haircut. My God. What was that last week?
No, it was over the weekend, so it would have been last time you saw.
I'm glad I noticed. All right. Oh,
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. I should say this is episode something 205, being recorded mid-ish May. We'll do the proper intro, and as I'm going to try and do before all of our shows, this is the raw version of the show, so we're going to screw up and pause, and people may drop out, and I have to bring them back in, that kind of thing. So if you're watching this after the fact, this is a live recording, Google Hangouts. If you're watching after the fact, yeah, I'm not going to clean this up. If you want the real version, you listen to the MP3 that we publish via our RSS feed and on iTunes and Stitcher and other things. All right. So, Chill will introduce our two guests, who are Ufalong, who has been on the Theory Crafting Roundtable, and our guildmate Ivalon, who, for other Utini nights, and rages, you may know as HK Chubbs. Now, I'm getting some feedback. So, is someone? Could you check your mic, headphone volume, please? Just make sure it's down as low as you can, because I'm picking up.
Tell you what,
myself.
See if this makes any difference.
Okay. I am testing. That's pretty good.
That made a difference?
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep refining things. So I just turned off my headphones, and I'll have to turn the volume down rather than turning them off so that I can actually hear you guys. But
all right.
So
Test.
Continue to turn it down.
Test. Yeah, okay, I'm not hearing myself now. Perfect.
Well, mine are pretty low.
Okay.
I can still hear you guys.
So, Chill, can you ask both guys, particularly Ivalon, the usual intro questions?
Yes.
Yep, okay.
Fun.
He's all set. It's no trick questions. And as far as those topics go that you suggested, I suspect we will not get to them this week.
Okay.
So we're going to have to bring you
Sure.
back. Sorry.
Okay, great, man. No problem. Glad to be here.
Because especially the music one, that is a really good idea.
Yeah,
So,
that could be fun. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
All right, tweeting out about the show. Yeah, we should be good to go. So as long as I don't stop the broadcast inadvertently like I did a couple of weeks ago, we should be good. All right, Chill. Let's make the magic happen.
All right. Going in 5. Hi, and welcome to the OotiniCast, the podcast that doesn't judge you for your love of Jar Jar much. This is episode 205, being recorded on Wednesday, May 13th, 2015. I'm your host, Chill, with our producer and co-host, Tio. Hi, Tio.
Hey, guys.
And our guests today are, we have some new ones today, Ivalon and Ufalong. So, Ivalong, also known as HK Chubbs, we've heard from you a lot on the podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, let us know a little bit about what you do in the game and out of the game.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me. So
Great.
my main is Ivalon, Sage Healer. I started playing, let's see, a few months after, I was just telling Tio, a few months after launch, and it was totally like the dark time when, there was nobody on Fleet. Like the first time I went to Fleet, with my first character, I remember thinking like, oh, this is amazing, but certainly seems like maybe there should be more people here. I don't know. There's just huge hallways, kind of like running around by myself. I mean, it was like before they merged the servers.
Before the server mergers and all that.
It was like right before the server mergers, and to the point where, literally, they were probably like that day. They're like, "Oh my God, merge today, please," because our player base is quitting.
What was your original server? Do you remember?
You know what? That's a great question. I don't. It was one of those really weird. They had so many at the beginning. It was like a weird KOTOR reference that even I didn't know. Huge KOTOR nerd here, by the way. And I don't know. I got merged to the Harbinger and whatever. Happen to be. I've been on the Harbinger ever since, and it's a great server. I met some of you guys. I actually started listening to the cast. Joined the guild about a little over a year ago. But I unfortunately don't raid. I can't raid at your guys' normal time, so I'm a pretty decent healer. Other than my connection issues, I have some bad connection issues. But so when I went into Underlurker the first time, bad situation. Just because I was one of those people having lag issues where I couldn't see the cross spawn. So I love to raid, but unfortunately it's not my focus right now because I have trouble getting through them in terms of my connection. So I like to do I'm more of a Jawa joyride type person, going through the old content. Love that stuff. Let's see, alts. I've got I'm becoming a bit of an altaholic. I do a lot of crafting. I've been crafting implants like crazy. Probably Bill is. He's probably like he's got to be that guy, the competition. He's probably got about 50 different names, but I've been crafting implants and just flooding the market with implants, trying to make some credits off the 12X. My favorite thing, I guess, in the game is probably the environments and the whole Star Wars-y immersion. I actually really enjoy that. I think more than PvP and even more than Ops for me. So I guess I'm one of those kind of nerdy, Star Wars lovers more than I am an MMOer. But I enjoy PvP. Yeah.
Right. That is a recipe for becoming an altaholic, by the way.
Oh,
if you love the story and the immersion, you will make multiple characters. It will happen.
That is what's happening. You're right. I'm finally. I never did the last story that I never did was the agent. So I just rolled an agent, and I'm actually a huge fan of what Tio's been saying, which is the 12X, being able to turn it on and off. But you know what? I want to go through that agent story and go through pretty much. I have to do all the side quests, man. There's a triangle. It gets clicked. I'll do that with the agent, old school, and hopefully by that time I'll have a better connection and I can enjoy the ops content a little better.
Awesome. All right, that sounds good. And Oofalong, so tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've been doing in the game.
Well, hi. Thanks for having me back. It's nice to be an official guest here as opposed to a participant in one of the theory crafting roundtables or one of the other discussions. So great to be on the regular show here. I've been playing since launch, predominantly known as a theory crafter, particularly for Marauders and Sentinels. That was the first tune I rolled. I always say named Oofalong. My forum name was Oofalong. My legacy name was Oofalong. I was a complete noob when I started playing this game. First MMO. I actually had to buy a PC to play this game. But really just immersed myself into the SWTOR community. I've had a lot of fun with it. I've got to meet a number of great people across the world, like yourselves. And in-game, I would consider myself more of a aspiring progression raider. I think that's an interesting moniker, and we'll talk more about that, I'm sure, a little bit later, about what progression is and what that raid community means. But I like to clear difficult content. I like the challenge of it. I like the teamwork required to achieve success there. But I don't have the time, due to real-life conflicts such as a family and work, to be able to devote the hours to the game that I would perhaps like to. So primarily focus on PvE, but I do dabble in PvP, although very rarely of late.
Right. So you bought a PC just for SWTOR, then? What were you just a longtime Star Wars fan? Is that what was going on?
Really? Well, yes. I mean, first and foremost, a longtime Star Wars fan. I had the pleasure of seeing Return of the Jedi in the movie theater. I was too young for the others, so just to give you too young for the others, just to date myself a little bit. But I was also a big BioWare fan. I loved KOTOR. I loved the Dragon Age series of games. So whatever BioWare was putting out, I was picking up. And so when I heard that they were getting involved with this Star Wars-related MMO, I thought it would be worth giving it a try. My brother, who was a big WoW player, really convinced me to try this out. And so I started on day one. I missed all of the pre-order or beta, early access stuff, but I started on launch day and have been here ever since.
Very cool. All right.
To clarify, I had a Mac, not a PC previously, so it's not that I was necessarily computer illiterate. And for a while, I actually installed SWTOR on my work laptop to play on that for the first 4 or 5 months until I actually bought a proper gaming desktop.
Very cool. All right.
Cool.
And Tio, how about your week?
Well, I've actually been sick on the weekend, and for various reasons, because all that travel I did the last couple of weeks sort of took it out of me, brought a bug back, and yeah, so I actually have not been playing pretty much at all between that and work. Anyway, and also we're moving in just over a week to the new place, so that has just Anyway, so the new studio will be set up not the next show, the show after, with our 100 megabit down and 40 up.
Yeah. Can I come over? I just come over to your place and play SWTOR, like catch the plane, use your connection.
Now, however, I will talk about our raiding, because we did raid as per normal. We had the full team, the usual team, together on day one, which is our short day. So we did hard mode Sparky. We took down Bulo again for the second time, and that was actually, it did take us 2 or 3 goes, but
made some errors. But
once we got the, post nerf, sadly, and once we got the dance down, it's pretty easy. Then we went to Ziost, and we did story mode version of Colossal Monolith, which is obviously easy enough. And then we did the Ziost World Boss, because, as we discovered, it gives you a buff called Ancient Protection, which lasts for 5 hours. And we thought if we just get the buff, then when we come in tomorrow, on day 2, we can then just do the hard mode version of Colossal Monolith, which actually requires that buff to do.
Right.
But, as we discovered, it doesn't persist through logout. So it's 5 hours of real time, and so we had to kill the world boss again and get the buff again. Anyway, we had a few goes, since we're on Ziost anyway, on Colossal Monolith hard mode. We did not get him down. However, we'll look a bit more about it later. But we should have a good chance this week. We may have given up a little too easily. Obviously, it's not as hard as Revan, hard mode Revan, which is the other encounter in the game, which gives a main hand, a rating 198 main hand. In fact, this guy drops the 204 rating main hand, which has been a source of controversy in the community, obviously. But you do have to work for it at least a little bit to actually... It's not quite a loot pinata. Anyway,
Tio.
the rest of...
I was just going to say, incidentally, just for future reference, when you go to kill the World Breaker Monolith, if somebody's already pulled him, you don't actually have to kill him. You just have to be in proximity when he dies, and you'll still get the buff.
Oh,
so
that
it's
is
worth.
Really?
Yep.
That's
right.
good.
That is excellent to know. So, as Ufalong said, if another guild is actually already on the world boss, help DPS him.
Yeah, just help him out.
Yeah. Now,
And he won't-
as far,
Sorry. You won't get the drops, but you'll get the buff. So if that's all
Exactly.
you're really looking for, then you're golden.
that's great advice.
What happens if someone disconnects? Do you lose the buff if you disconnect?
No, I think it is 5 hours of real time. So we have to be there when he dies is the key point.
Right.
Now, as far as the world boss goes, the mechanics for that, as we worked out, was you start fighting him almost immediately. 3 ads will spawn while the ads are up. He is immune, so you basically have to DPS all 3 ads, and when all 3 are stunned, because you bring them down to about 10%, and then they just go into a sort of, they're paralyzed or whatever, you can then DPS the boss until they pop out again. Now, the key there is you bring them down at about the same rate, so that they all go paralyzed at about the same time, which means you'll get as much uptime on damaging the actual boss before at least one comes back up. Now, we were trying to use AoE and stuff, that didn't work too well, so we ended up just marking them and assigning DPS to all 3 and then someone to float between them, and that worked out much better. We were able to consistently get them down at roughly the same time So the
Right.
second time was much easier.
I was ranged, and I started floating, and that worked out pretty well.
Yeah, and also don't be very careful where the tank is moving the world boss. If you move him too far away from where he spawns, he will leash and just
And
reset.
And just instantly resets too.
Yeah.
There's no getting them back. Oh man,
Just
That
to
It's
chime
kind
in,
of heartbreaking.
that was
to chime
painful.
in.
It did happen.
to
And it
chime
wasn't like
in
you were
on
like trying to. It wasn't like you were trying to drag them all over the map. It was not that very far away, actually. I think you wanted to back up to like that wall that's kind of nearby. Basically, it seemed like.
I hadn't even noticed we'd moved that far.
Yeah.
Ufo? Yes.
I was just say the other thing to be mindful of is particularly on a PvP server, it seems to happen more often. But another group could taunt the boss and pull him away from where you're standing and force him to reset on you. So if you've been working on him for 2 or 3 minutes and you had him down to 20%, and other players come in and taunt the boss and force him to reset, that can be quite disappointing. So always as a tank, try and keep a taunt in your back pocket, and if you have anybody in your raid group killing it who has a taunt as well, have them be prepared to taunt you just to maintain its positioning so you don't run the risk of it being reset on you.
Because people can be bastards, and there are griefers in the world. Yes.
Yeah, to chime in on that, absolutely. That's exactly what happens during the Rakghoul event with the various world bosses, the 3 different world bosses for each planet. For the Rakghoul event, you guys have all experienced it, but yeah, the imps will come or pubs will come and like just taunt them away, and it's actually really it's actually really fun. But I was gonna say also, yeah, I think it was Zyos day 3 or whatever, maybe day 2 after they released the daily area. The same exact thing happened to me. I ran down in there. And there was a group forming up for the world boss nobody had ever brought down, that's one of my favorite things about the game is literally just being blind, not having any idea how to beat something. I love that. and nobody knew how to beat him yet, like you just said, Tio. Nobody knew to DPS together the ads. And everybody was like all over the place. And of course, we started kind of going up the hill, and he reset. Then the next time we kind of went the other way, and he reset. Yeah, but I love that when nobody really knows yet. It's not at all like a farming situation. It's just like nobody. It's actually dangerous, quote unquote, or it actually feels like you could, die. It sounds silly, but that doesn't happen very often in this game unless you're, doing hard mode raiding like you guys are.
Right. Something I found about the game from this world boss is the line of sight is not based on like the enemy model. I was on my gunslinger, and there's this little sand hill that's maybe all of like 2 meters high at the highest, and if the boss was on the other side of it, even though it's 5 stories high, it's a freaking Godzilla, I was line of sighted from that little bugger, so I had to go to the top of this sandhill thing just to make sure that I wasn't line of sighted for this giant boss, which I was hitting with guns. So, so yeah, I found out that the line of sight is somewhere set around the feet.
Yeah, which doesn't really make sense, but whatever.
Oh, no.
Usually it makes sense, and then you have these edge cases that kind of highlight the mechanic rather than the the immersion.
All right, to finish out our rating day, we did finish off the session with a fair amount of time on hard mode Sword Squadron. We were sort of getting there. It wasn't our full group because Turg had another commitment and couldn't join us. But
Right.
yeah, I know it's just highlighting where we are in terms of skill level. It's probably not the highest in the world.
Definitely not. We know that.
Yeah. It's just no excuses. It's just us.
It's up for grabs. Let's go for it.
Yeah. Anyway, we did get some advice from Jeremy, that's at Darksplat, who was on the a few shows ago, fellow Aussie, and he did provide us a bunch of tips, which certainly did help with Billow, and hopefully will also help us with the Walkers. Now,
Right. The DPS running away tip on Bulo is really excellent.
yes.
Yeah.
All right. Now, that's pretty much my week. This coming week, there's a move coming up, but hopefully I'll get at least some time to play. So, anyway, that's my week. Over to you, Chill.
All right. Did quite a bit of streaming this week. It was nice to get back into that groove. Mostly I was leveling the Inquisitor. I do the hashtag Whispers of the Force when I tweet that out. And she is on to Alderaan next, I believe, as I recall. And then yesterday, just for fun, I made like a She-Hulk type Mary Ellen power tech. and so I'm leveling her. I spent probably too many credits like getting the look right, like buying the Miriam tattoo unlocks and the right dye module, which turned out to be rare and rather expensive, and blah 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 blah. But and I tried to take some screenshots, but I did it during the cutscenes, and some of the cutscenes you can take screenshots and some you can't, so they didn't take. But eventually I'll get a good screenshot of her, and she looks very much like you imagine she would. She's not very far along at all. She's in Dermacos. So. Yeah, but that's fun too, and it's nice to do to level as a power tech. Actually, I haven't. It's been a long time. I did a power tech, but it was a fairly early character, and then I kind of dropped her, and she just became a crew skill character. So I haven't done a power tech in a long time, and it's also nice to see the story again. So nice to see Mako.
Good old Mako.
Yep.
Or as they might say
yeah,
on Bad Feeling Podcast, the pile of Makos. Shout out to Bad Feeling Podcast.
Pile of Makos.
Pile of Makos.
Yeah, there's a few really fun companions in the game. She's right up there. So right up there with the vets and the Gus Tunos and the others that are fun like that. All right, so yeah, I'm planning on doing more streaming this week on that. That's a lot of fun. Leveling on stream is a lot of fun. All right, so let's get on to the tip of the week. We had quite a few, so we actually are going to break it up into 2 sets of 4 tips each, and we're going to give out double the prizes. So there you go. We're going to start off set 1, number 1, John, a.k.a. Coralie of Elia Yacta Est on Jedi Covenant. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that. Huh? AIE? Okay.
Yep.
Just call it AIE. That's a lot easier. Since patch 3.2 has dropped, I noticed a change with the tooltips when hovering over mobs while running quests. It appears that the tooltip now has information as to what quests the mob gives you credit for and how many are left that you need to kill. I don't remember seeing this info before the patch, and neither did anyone else in my guild. If this was added in patch 3.2, it wasn't in the patch notes unless it was one of the numerous systems that was improved. This edition will help a lot with everyone leveling with the Epic Story XP boost. Thank you for doing the show, and I'm glad to support you all on Patreon. Well, thank you, John.
Thank you, sir.
And
now, we have talked about that tooltip edition. I think I first noticed it in the 3.0.
I think 3.0 is when it dropped.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. We noted we did mention it on the show, but so much was going on at that point. There's a lot of things that kind of slipped by everyone's radar. So it's good to mention it. And yes, that's right. It's absolutely right when he mentions the XP boost means people are getting back into leveling, and they're not just doing dailies that they already know everything about, that sort of thing. So it's good to be able to hover over one of the enemies and see if it's part of your quest or not.
Yes. All right, our second tip is from Phalith of the Prophecy of the Five server. If you hit level 60 before starting Yavin, but never started the questline there, you won't have the option to travel to Yavin 4 from the Priority Transport Terminal. My tip is this: you don't need to complete the Yavin story in order to unlock the Priority Transport. All you have to do to get the unlock is complete the first mission, planning the census, and the transport option will be available to you. Happy travels! It's a good tip, and that first mission is a bit of a pain because you have to travel through those 2 different areas and plant the 6 sensors, but it's not that bad. If you just want to raid and get your quick travel there, why not?
That is nice. Yeah. All right, third tip from Jason Willis. Rocket Boost does not break stealth and can also be used with the Sentinel and Marauder abilities, Force Camouflage. In other words, that stealth ability as well. Most new players don't know about that, and it sure makes 12 times XP that much easier for those classes. Yeah,
Yes,
it's crazy on any sort of stealth character. 12 times XP becomes just like, it's XP from the sky, man. It's crazy fast. It's like you don't even learn how to play your character. It's like when you actually have to fight something for a class mission, it's like, okay, what abilities are these again? I'll just spam buttons and hope they drop.
And then you discover you haven't uploaded your gear, and
yeah, and then it's like, oh well, I over leveled him by 4 levels, so I think I'm okay.
I thought I saw on Reddit somebody had posted a screenshot of I think it was an assassin that they had leveled from 0 to 60 something like 6 hours and 20 minutes or something like that. So yeah, stealth with 12x XP is really strong.
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
And I totally
And kind of
believe
tragic.
it too. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The new travel, rocket boost,
Right.
no cooldown on quick travel. It's all amazingly fast. Yeah.
Yep.
Aren't there people
Alright.
also like skipping their advanced class or something? Apparently that's a thing. Just like skip your advanced class and try to get to 60 as a knight.
As a knight, there are people have done that. Usually, then they go trolling in ranked.
Yes, they do. All right, our fourth and last tip from set 1 is tops from the League of Extraordinary Outcasts on the Jedi Covenant server. My tip is for anyone who wants to have the best possible stats in PvP or in general. While everyone knows that you should be getting datacrons with your main stat, less people know that getting the other tech or force-related attribute also boosts your stats. For example, as a trooper, aim is your primary stat, but cunning also gives you a very small boost to your crit and tech bonus damage. Since it is not your primary stat, you should never stack it over your primary stat or power when choosing or modifying your gear, of course.
That's right.
But it may help having a few extra mirror stats via the datacrons so that you don't have to worry quite as much about crit. Now,
Absolutely.
obviously, you've run the numbers on this. Is it really worth it?
I mean, stats are stats, so you take any points wherever you can get them. It's free stats. There's no,
It's free
you don't have to make
stats,
any trade-offs, so you might as well
Exactly.
get it.
Right.
It's worth
Only
noting
trade-off
that
is the time you spend.
right. It's worth noting this isn't really applicable for healers. Your bonus healing power and your bonus or your critical healing do not benefit from this alternate primary stat. It's only for your DPS abilities, and then even within that, it's selective. So strength, for instance, boosts your melee bonus damage and your melee crit chance, whereas willpower will boost your force crit, and that's universal. So if you're on a Marauder or Guardian or Sentinel or Juggernaut, you will benefit from getting the willpower because that will boost your force-based abilities. Now, the converse of that being, if you're on a Sage or Sorcerer, you don't really have melee abilities, so picking up that strength isn't going to benefit you. I mean, yes, you have a Saber Strike, which is considered a melee ability, but the majority of your attacks when you're a Sorcerer or a Sage are force-based ranged attacks. So now, Assassins and Shadows would benefit from incremental strength as well. So there's certainly no reason not to do it. It's not going to be an appreciable difference, but for those who want to min-max or those who are completionists, absolutely, it's a great way to spend a little bit more time in game.
All right. And for the first 4 tips, the winner is Phaleth, and we'll go over the prizes in the second half. So here's the first tip for the second set of 4. Isaiah writes, got an outfit that you like in the Outfit Designer tab, and don't want to sell it after applying it but don't have room in your inventory? Just equip it to a companion. It frees up your inventory and you get to keep it. That makes sense.
Alright, and our next tip from set 2 is from Lethal X Bacon, our old
Bacon,
friend.
yes. Mm-hmm.
I have a tip that I found very useful for leveling, especially during this epic story XP boost. And Tio, he says, you can use this tip too. If you have the purple crystal box with all the plus 41 stats, or any crystal you might have unlocked in collections, go into collections and copy a bunch of them into your inventory. I would copy around 10 at a time and just leave them in my inventory to save time from sorting through collections later. As soon as I or my companion got a new weapon, I would throw a new crystal into it. No use wasting creds ripping out the one in your old weapon. Having that plus 41 at the low level is a noticeable difference for you and your companion. Yes, yes it is. Another tip, and Tio, you can't use this one. Try timing out your last gain from the epic XP boost by getting as close as you can to 55 without going over, similar to the way everyone maximizes their reputation cap for the week. Well, I hope these tips are useful and keep up the good work.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Very
in other words,
much
when
so,
you're just about to ding wherever that, it's probably going to be somewhere on McCab. Probably not the last mission though. Go ahead and grind a few mobs and whatever, and get real close, and then pow, you're like halfway through to 56.
You know,
Nice.
the other thing about that is I've noticed for myself, it's pretty annoying when, for me, I like to run, again, I like to run the flashpoints on every character as I'm leveling, and I like to try to get flashpoint achievements, which aren't always easy to get all of those. And when you ding 56, you can no longer group finder for that stuff. Or you know how that is. You've got to be really careful about when you get to any particular level because the group finder locks you out of XYZ content. So, yeah, it is really important to keep a good eye on what level you're on and make sure you don't miss content that's level specific if you want to do it.
Very good. All right, let's see. The next tip from Jason W. For those new players who that don't know, or old ones who haven't noticed, if you start a conversation with NPCs while mounted or using Rocket Boost, you will not get affection points with your companion. The game considers your companion not summoned at that point, and with all the extra XP out there, you'll want to maximize game since you'll most likely see less conversations. So, yep, and you can also use the opposite trick. Like if the companion that you use for fighting is the kind who absolutely hates everything your character has to say, then you actually stay mounted when you're starting a conversation. Keeps them out of the conversation. You keep them from losing affection points.
Nice.
So that works too.
You know, that brings up another great point that I hadn't really thought about. But when you're doing 12x, yeah, it's pretty hard to level your companions, I guess, because you're getting so many less conversation choices if you're just doing 12x.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, these characters that I'm leveling, I'll get whatever one I have out will do okay, and no one else will get anything basically.
Just before we go to the last tip, we have Dark Edge Gaming from our Twitch chat. Chill answered your question about the line of sight and how it seems to be at the character model's feet. And why that is. It's across all MMOs. It isn't unique to Star Wars. It's the SWTOR. And the reason is, and the way he says, Dark Edge Gaming says, a friend who has some tech insight into MMOs says line of sight is based on the feet because game coordinates have to take into account every model's art.
Right.
And are probably calculated based on the common position all mobs share, their base hitbox. That is, they got to be standing on something, typically. And even if they're flying, their hitbox still has a base. That makes sense?
Yep. So whether you're hitting Godzilla or a Womp Rat, there's going to be something there 1 inch off the ground. So that's.
It's a shame they couldn't use the center of the model, given they all will have a height as well. But
yeah, but that probably causes issues with like range and stuff.
Yeah.
That could be related to. Possibly that's the reason why we have so many bosses with that incredible gluteal cleft, and the way that gluteal cleft is kind of low to the ground and very well defined. Maybe that has something to do with line of sight. Just saying. Just saying.
All right, and our last tip in the second set is from Flesh, recruit officer for the Grievance Guild on Jedi Covenant. I have a fun fact plus a tip for the OotiniCast listeners that they might find useful with the outfit designer, enduring 12 times XP as they level characters or start new characters. I submitted this tip last summer during Double XP weekend as well, but I thought it bears mentioning again. So his tip is, if you have at least newcomer standing with the Contraband Resale Corporation from one of the early cartel pack shipments, and 40,000 credits, you can buy a level 43 moddable chest piece with purple mods in the Cartel Bazaar section from the Gula Sem NPC on Republic or Ron Bess NPC on Imperial Fleet. These purple level mods will keep you in good shape for quite a few levels as well. One other note is that all of these chest pieces can be used in the outfit designer or just equipped in your main gear slot, since they are adaptable armor.
Nice.
Cool. Wow. Who knew?
Was that the reputation that we got from the slot machine? Can anyone confirm? Was that one of the other ones?
I don't believe so. I thought it was the reputation from the very first cartel pack, and I thought the slot machine rep was the second one.
Yeah, I think it is one of the earliest ones.
Alright, and Flesh also has a fun fact for us. With all the talk about Milton working in the basement of BioWare on bug fixes, you may be interested to know that the opening scene, with the traffic jam, of Office Space was filmed just a few blocks away from the BioWare Austin campus. The majority of the film was also filmed at locations around Austin. So maybe once Milton was done with filming, He second career as a programmer. Why not?
There we go.
Wow. But my stapler. But love that guy.
All right, by random allotment, the winner of the second half of the tips is Flesh. So congratulations. You two are winners of Tonfon or M8R3 Droid pet codes, courtesy of BioWare, and a new OotiniCast provided Cartel Market Pack from the latest shipment. If you'd like a chance to win the same, please send your tips to OotiniCast@gmail.com by next Tuesday. And that will bring us to the holofeed. Tio?
All right, some news at least. And I'm very glad we have Ufalong with us to talk us through the Marauder and Sentinel kerfuffle, shall we say. But before we get to that, firstly, patch 3.2b mysteriously appeared during regular maintenance on Tuesday. The only thing they changed was the Colossal Monolith's Breaking the Rift ability, now properly channels for its entire duration. Now, if you'd read the guide on Dolphy, they had recommended that you can actually cheese the, well, Simon Says, as they've been calling it, part of the encounter, the mechanic, where everyone, well, 4 members of your raid have to stand in one of the coloured circles, pick up the colour, and go to where the Colossal Monolith starts channeling an ability called, is it Breaking? Yeah, the Breaking the Rift. And if the cast completes, bad things apparently happen. And everyone with the colour has to stand in the 4 coloured patches. What you can do instead is everyone just stand under the boss, and then for some reason he was actually breaking that cast early, so you didn't take as much damage, because the damage just keeps on going until the ability stops. Yeah, so apparently they fixed that. That was an, well, exploit if you like, but let's just call it
pretty
let's just call it a bug.
liberal with our use of exploit here, huh?
Let's just throw it around. Why not? Anything's an exploit these days.
Right.
But yes, it was
incidentally, Gio, did you get the Simon Says reference? I don't know if you're familiar with that toy or that game.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
For many, many years ago. I don't know if it's still a thing. Haven't paid much attention.
I don't believe it
I'm
is
sure
here
it's,
in the
yeah, I'm
States.
sure it's just a classic now, but yeah, it's the old Simon game with the 4 color buttons, and the thing that the boss does looks remarkably like it.
Now, this mechanic is hard mode only, right? This mechanic?
It is in story mode as well,
Oh.
though it's a lot less serious, of course. And what we noticed was, in fact, you probably heal through the damage in story. Never tried it. You only needed 3 of the people to have a colour. Like, by the time the 3rd person got into the circle, it then popped, so you didn't need all 4.
Only need 2 to execute the mechanic in story mode.
Okay.
4 in hard mode, obviously all 4 of them. But in
Right.
story mode, you only need 2 people to pick up the color debuffs and stand in, Simon Says.
We were doing it with all 4. We weren't sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. So just 2. Story mode is actually still, I wouldn't say that challenging once you got the hang of it, but yeah. Now, I will include a link in the show notes to a guide that was placed on Reddit for the Monolith. Just a bunch of helpful tips for hard mode, because as I talked about earlier, it is kind of painful. And this guide reckons that the key to the fight is it's all about avoiding damage. If you're giving too much work for your healers, they will be overwhelmed, because there is a lot of just other damage that is unavoidable in the fight. So giving them a bunch of avoidable as well, they will be overwhelmed. People are running with 3 healers instead of 2. In theory, that shouldn't be necessary. If it is, they've overtuned the fight. Yeah, anyway. We'll try it again this week and see how we go.
Man, I gotta say, healing is just stressful, just straight up. It's something about it. It's so stressful, you know.
If you're not a commando or a mercenary, I guess it would be. Yeah. Yeah, it's a shame all those healing changes, as we talked about last week, have been discontinued or postponed or whatever they've done, because there was some good stuff in there and also some really weird stuff. So we'll see what happens with that, but it won't be in 3.2.1. Right. Okay, so next, just a public service announcement about a bug that affects, it's a little obscure, but for those who are preferred, 2 of the unlocks that you can get are crew skill assignment that allows you to have 3 crew skills or 3 companions sent out in crew skills rather than just 2. for the account-wide version, and the additional quick bar unlock, which is also account-wide, doesn't actually work. So you try and use it, and it says you've already unlocked this on your account when you hadn't, and yeah, so that's bad. If you've done it and it got consumed, contact customer support and they'll fix it for you. It should be fixed in 3.2.1. Now, as far as when 3.2.1 game update 3.2.1 is coming out, we don't know. We would probably guess Tuesday week as a reasonably wild guess, 3 or 4 weeks after game update 3.2 dropped.
Can preferred players open in-game tickets?
That is a good question.
They could, and I mean, I know they don't have forum access to be able to post in the customer service thread, and I don't believe free-to-play can open in-game tickets, so I'm not sure where the delineation is.
I think you're actually correct, which means when the wording of it was contact customer support, and I believe the only vector for then would be calling them on the phone.
On the phone, right.
They can't stop that. Oh, that's all good. But anyway, anyway, we'll be fixed in 3.2.1. Okay. Next, the GRI event and Conquest. So, this was a little confusing in the way it all played out. So, as you know, the GRI are here. They arrived on Tuesday. They were supposed to only be here for a week. Now, the Conquest event this week is called the Relics Conquest, and it is tied to the GRI. The problem is that due to some kind of screw-up, it's actually finishing on Thursday US time, more or less after half the duration. So first problem is guilds couldn't invade, probably because there are only 3 days left and you can't invade after the 3 days, or with 3 days remaining. And yeah, so it's all messed up. So what they're doing about it is they will run this Relics Conquest event next week too, so starting on the usual Tuesday, and the GRI are gonna just stay here for an extra week. So 2 weeks of GRI. This week's Conquest was all messed up. Guilds couldn't invade. You could earn your personal points, but remember, you got to get the cap by the Thursday morning to actually get the rewards, and it will run again as per normal. But yeah, 2 weeks of the GRI. Can't complain about that.
That's cool. I gotta say though, I've maxed out the GRI. I've got everything done except for, of course, like many people, those pesky PvP. Some of those PvP achievements are kind of hard. Every time it comes around, I just go there and I'm like, okay, looking for PvP group. Let's get the achievements, and it's just a huge disaster. It's like you got to find 3 other people who really want to do it. Then you got to find 4 guys to go, to go grief, or who also want the achievements. It's like, oh my god! So it came around this time. I was all excited. I'm like, this is it. This is the time. I'm gonna get those achievements. I'm gonna be done with grief forever. And they announced it, and I was just like, oh god, I don't want to go back to Ilum. Just no more grief. Cool event, but it's just, we've done it so many times now. Help. We should put together an Ootini. Okay, yes, an Ootini PvP GRI achievement night. You know what I'm saying? We all get it.
I'm sure Booze would certainly be into that. Speaking of which, Booze was up to, was it 8 Guinness by the end of the second day? It may or may not have influence. He said he was seeing the Matrix, so that's apparently all good. So.
Right. That's our special nickname for Kuze because he does sometimes drink while raiding, and sometimes he doesn't. So he's just Kuze those nights, and then he's Booze some nights.
Do I remember correctly that he made a character called Booze? Isn't that right?
He was so happy with the nickname that that he made a character.
Nice.
All right. Next, ranked PvP. It's still a thing. And they have released the Season 5 rewards teaser. They aren't really telling us much, but they did indicate the Tier 1 reward, the mount, the Gladiatorial Nexu mount.
That is really cool.
Yeah, some sort of bondage-related beastie. Lots of leather and chains.
The Nexu Gimp.
That's Chill's next alt, Bondage Nexu. If you didn't use that already, Chill.
Or more accurately, it is armored and it does have chains on it. And yeah, so anyway.
It's very cool.
Yeah, it is apparently quite popular looking at the feedback that it had received. And at least for now, there is nothing confirmed about this appearing in the cartel market in some form, though, as per usual, that may happen.
Okay.
Yeah. Almost,
Now-
I guarantee it will be. There will be some version of the cartel market. If they bring back the summer hut gambling event, there will be some version perhaps on the slot machines there.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
But if it doesn't
Absolutely.
come with, if it doesn't come with like a chains and a whip, hanging from the side, it's not the same mount. Come on.
Sure.
It won't be as cool. That's a given. That's a given. Depending.
Fire
yeah,
stripes. Fire stripes.
Fire strip, yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to TorCommunity.com's Arena Stats post, and they've basically kept this up, so you can go there anytime and just see how many players are participating. The default graph that you see is actually quite interesting in that they show the number of players participating season on season, and while the number of players in Season 4 was certainly down, but not by as much, it looks like, or at least characters, somewhere shy of 23,750 characters actually participated. When you look at the number of players who are apparently doing it seriously with 3+ wins and 30+ medals, it's pretty much the same across Season 3 and Season 4, though clearly down on Seasons 1 and 2. So at least one way of reading that is that the win trading elimination has actually just cut out a bunch of players, so additional players who are assisting have just been erased from the data, so the numbers are down based on that. Or less people are playing. Or less bad people are playing. I don't know. Obviously, no detailed analysis there, just looking a brief look at the numbers. And that's just really interesting that the number of people doing well is the same between Season 3 and Season 4.
There's a lot of cool data on here, a lot of their charts, and season-to-season comparison by server comparisons. Some pretty neat stuff here.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's neat stuff.
All right, where were we? All right, something new. Platinum packs. The hell is a platinum pack, you may ask? Well, it's some new thing they're trying in the latest hyper crates, and it's essentially a special pack that will be present in addition to the 24 regular packs that you get in a hyper crate, if you're willing to fork out that much money, as our friend Kranatoko does every time they release a new one, and he does the videos, so keep your eye out for that. But anyway, what's a platinum pack? Essentially, there will be one per hyper crate. They are bind on pickup, so you cannot sell a platinum pack. They will contain a bunch of items from previous packs, which are sort of hand-selected. And those items, however, have the regular bind rules. So whatever you get out of a platinum pack, you can then sell on the GTN. You can't sell the platinum pack itself.
Okay.
So it just seems to be just a extra something to entice you to purchase a hyper crate.
The full hyper crate, right?
The example they give it: each platinum pack contains a random super rare or better item from the pack contents. Oh,
right.
Sorry. So it is from that pack. So for the deep core pack, which is a current shipment, the current pack, this could include the armored coastal Varactyl, a piece of the Dark Legionnaire's armor set, or the Throne of Enlightenment. So it's just another way of getting the stuff that's in that particular pack.
And to clarify, or more, there were other possible drops from that platinum pack of the deep core pack. So those were just they perhaps selected 3 of the most attractive items to list. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. So anyway, we'll have to watch Kranatoko's Deep Core video and find out what he got in his platinum pack. But yeah, that's another reason, if you're willing to spend, how much are they? A lot on a hypergrade.
Yeah, I think I saw Kranatoko opened a pack, a hypercrate. It must have been over a week ago, and it had a little special item in it. I'm sure you can imagine he had a little freak out, and the positive kind, like, oh my god, he freaked out. and he had a little extra something in there, and I had never seen it before either. And it has to be what it was, but it's pretty funny. It's worth a watch. He had a little Krenotoko style freak out moment when he saw that extra little goodie. And I did buy a Core Worlds, I think it is. The Hyper Crate is a different hype. Okay, you know what? I just outed myself. I bought a Hyper Crate. Yeah. Core Worlds. Yeah. And now public service announcement. I do not recommend this pack. Like, I bought a Hyper Crate. Actually, I didn't buy a Hyper Crate. I bought 24 of the little guys because they were really cheap. Right. They do not have. They each have like 3 items in them. They're a rip-off, actually.
You never buy the
There's something different about them.
Yeah, there's 2 different kinds of
lower
packs
rate.
out there sometimes, and you have to watch. Yeah, some of them are full, and some of them have. Yeah, some of them are.
Seriously,
like,
so
almost
some of
like
them
partial packs.
don't have all the items. Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, they got me. I'm such an idiot. You know, it's just like, yeah, Darth Vader nose scream. Insert here. Yeah, it's stupid. Never again. Thank you, BioWare.
I think you only get
Before
one
I
of the
buy a
drops.
pack now. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I think you only get one of the drops, but you get all of the junk. And by junk, I mean like the Jawa junk, the XP boost, the companion gifts, but only one actual item in there. So for the more expensive packs, you get at least 2 items. So and you have a better chance at the more attractive items.
You have a better chance of getting a good one, right? Yeah, it's pretty crap. I always, if I do decide to buy one off the GTN, I always hover over it and make sure it's the full pack nowadays because I've burned it a few times.
Yeah.
Sad face.
Yeah, Dynamite said he confirmed that, and also said he got some indigo crystals and the monocycle from the Platinum pack. So,
wow, that monocycle is really cool looking. Yeah, it's really cool looking.
I think Ari said she bought exactly 1 pack, which is what she does, and she got the monocycle from that. She's got this really amazing luck as far as that goes.
Wow.
Yeah, so can we talk about how great your luck is down in Australia then? Because with you creating your first character, doing the Mandalore statue, the monocycle, what are you guys doing out there that I'm doing wrong?
Hey, they are.
I
lucky
wish
they
I
are.
knew, and I wish
All
luck
you have to
applied
do
to
is
something more useful in life. But
I'm up to 275 characters created so far and still haven't gotten the Mandalore statue.
Oh, okay. Well, you're less than 100 away from me. So
Well, true.
if you go another 100, you'll pass me.
I hope I don't have to, but
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, Chill, I think you were doing it wrong. I've got it down to like 30 seconds to tune from character creation to character deletion.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely got faster once I switched to Scoundrel, but also remember I was like doing things on stream and stuff, so I was definitely going for, and like I guess if you just all you did was like zoom over to the mail and just open up, grab the crate and open it up, that would save some time too. I was also like sending off the Rishi idol to my main as a counter and stuff like that.
Right.
So.
No, that was a good way to
Chill's luck holds. If Chill's luck holds, and if it's like the Rancor, then Chill, but you should basically roll like one more. Just roll one more boom, second statue.
That's right. I was actually wondering when I made like the She-Hulk type character if that was in fact going to happen, but it did not. But yes, I was thinking that exact same thing.
Alright, so Platinum packs are a thing in Hypercrates. As Dark Edge Gaming said, when he first heard of these packs, his brain immediately pictured some weird EA crossover thing from Madden with Dallas Cowboys armor or something. Not quite, but who knows. Alright, next, 12 times XP Eliminator. This is the white acute module you purchase from the Gree vendor on the fleet, the guy who's in combat training near the skill mentor NPC, the one who you use to reset your discipline. Well, they were thinking of sending them to the starting planets as of game update 3.2.1, so that your new characters don't have to go to the fleet to pick one up to eliminate their XP gains from 12 times XP, because that would be a problem with a brand new character.
Yeah, you can't go to you can't go to the fleet at level 1
until level. I think it's level 10 is when they gate it, or something, or is it class quest?
It's a little lower. Yeah, I actually got to the fleet at level 7 on my character because, like I said, I wanted to get her look set up as early as possible. So I actually tried it a few times along the way, and level 7 was when I was able to get there. Could be a little earlier, and I just wouldn't know it, but yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, it turns out they couldn't manage that. They couldn't put the Gree vendor on the starter planet, so instead they're going to make it Binder Legacy, which is probably where it should have been in the first place. Remember, it's currently Binder Pickup. It costs 0 credits, and you use it, and it will give you a buff which eliminates your gain from 12 times XP, and it will be Binder Legacy as of game update 3.2.1.
Okay.
Now, let's talk about Marauders and Sentinels, which were getting a bit of a shake-up in Game Update 3.2.1. Now, we do not want to go through all of the details of the change, because who knows where they're going to end up, given all of the discussion. Oofalong, can you summarize the gist and why the community seems to be universally unhappy with what is being proposed by BioWare for Marauders and Sentinels?
Right. So I think the first thing that's interesting to note is that it is universally the entire Sentinel Marauder community, the PvE and the PvP, particularly in the PvE, the Annihilation and Watchmen players. So basically there's been, since 3.0 has come out, there's been a very anti-melee bias in much of the content. They've made range more viable, range have a lot more mobility, so a lot of the things that melee used to do really well, they no longer excel at. As a result, their classes are relatively underpowered, and perhaps none more so than the Marauder. We don't have stealth like an Assassin or an Operative might, and we don't have the cooldowns that a Guardian would. So there's certainly some frustration within the Marauder community for PvP. And what they did is they basically changed the utilities around such that it makes it more difficult, actually impossible, to access all of the desirable utilities that are necessary. The prime example being this one called defensive forms, which previously had 2 elements to it. The first was it increased your fury and centering when you took damage. And so as a melee DPS, you were often taking damage, and that fury and centering system is tied to your ability to deal damage. So in other words, taking damage actually allowed you to deal a little bit more damage, which as a DPS is always a good thing. The second thing, it offered some type of defensive or survivability boost based on which discipline you were in. So Juyo, Ataru, or Shicho. And what they did is they took that key ability, because it was too strong and everybody required it, or everyone thought it was essential, they basically stripped away some of the benefit of that utility and divided it up, making it so that it was inaccessible. You could not get the same benefit that you previously could. So here in PvP, when Marauders are already underrepresented and the community is already frustrated, they made it even more difficult. And the argument basically was, and so this was the first of John's posts that we'll talk about perhaps still as part of this segment, the concept was, hey, that skill, that utilities are meant to be choice. You're supposed to have trade-offs. It's supposed to be some player preference. We don't want anything that's a utility to be a requirement. And since defensive forms was a requirement, they basically gutted it and spread around the utility that it provided to make it not essential. So you took something that was too strong and you divided up its benefit into smaller pieces. It doesn't mean that the requirement for that utility disappeared and the requirement for that benefit disappeared. It just means you've now made it impossible to actually get. So previously you could get it, now you can't. So it's kind of an interesting way to solve that problem. I think another way, and the one that the community was requesting, was to take the Fury centering building component out of the utility, because again that is tied to our ability to deal damage, and make that a baseline ability for all Sentinels and Marauders, because we need to be able to deal damage to be effective.
That makes sense. I was going to say, if they are going to do it that way, then you're going to need to. There needs to be an offsetting buff if you're going to absolutely take away some of this benefit. So yeah, I can see that making it a baseline would solve that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. The other side to this, the other big change was they made a lot of changes to the Watchmen and Annihilation playstyle. Since 3.0 launched, there had already been, I think Watchmen and Annihilation may have been one of the most different specs from its pre-3.0 playstyle. Pre-3.0, I think the best description was it was a dot spec that didn't play like a dot spec. Everything was short dots, 6 seconds. You had a longer dot, but it was indirectly applied. So it felt like a very bursty type of dot spec. There was a lot of dynamism as you had to choose which ability to use next based on your resource levels. And in the initial launch of 3.0, they made the spec very similar to other 18-second duration dot specs. So lethality or virulence, any of those, dirty fighting, any of those, it more closely followed that. And it made the spec feel very clunky for a number of Marauders. There was a lot of vocal opposition when it first launched. It may not have been everyone's cup of tea. It did work as a spec. So what happened then is with 3.2.1, they've gone back to the drawing board because ostensibly the community asked for it, for them to revisit the Watchmen and Annihilation playstyle. And what they've created here is really a juxtaposition of short, hard-hitting melee attacks with longer dot abilities. So, and instead of it all being on a uniform time scale of 6 seconds or 12 seconds like that, we have some of our abilities timed on a 6-second cycle and some of the abilities timed on a 15-second cycle. Okay. So it makes it so that you often have this, what I've always called dissonance within the spec. It makes it very difficult to choose what to do next. And apparently this was the design, or this was the idea for the spec to make it more difficult to play, which, I think that's debatable whether or not this is more difficult to play. I think the initial response from everybody is that it's less fun to play, and considering 3.0 was already not fun by many standards, to make something less fun is certainly irritating. And initial tests, both from player testing as well as some modeling that I did, show that it's a DPS loss compared to what we currently have on live. And given the relatively weak position that Marauders and Sentinels currently have on the live servers, a nerf to DPS was perhaps the last thing they needed in a PvE environment. So a great number of factors all kind of came to a head last week with the final changes to 3.2.1. A lot of discontent within the community, and it led to, I guess, what happens next, or what the next topic here, which was, Tio, if I can I go on with this, or do you want to take over the conversation?
Well, tell us about the post that sort of triggered the event we're about to talk about.
Right. Okay. So I believe it was on Wednesday. Musco tweeted out that there were some Marauder, or previously Musco had said that there were going to be some Marauder posts explaining what was going on, Marauder Sentinel posts. And so John Juranowski, I apologize if I'm pronouncing your surname or last name incorrectly, created 3 posts that went up in several-hour intervals. The first post was in reference to that defensive form utility that I mentioned was really important for both dealing damage effectively as well as staying alive. And his response was kind of what I alluded to, that, hey, a utility is not supposed to be a requirement, so what we've done to change this utility is stripped out some of the benefit. So there was quite an uproar about that. I'll be honest, I'm not sure which of the 3 posts caused the most uproar. I will say I think by the time the 3rd post came out that everyone was kind of numb to the frustrations, so it didn't, maybe the 3rd one had less ire, but that was just based on the fact that everybody was too far gone perhaps by that point. So the 2nd post that came out was around the Watchmen and Annihilation playstyle. And, I've heard it described as a learn-to-play post from the devs. I think that's accurate in some ways. It certainly forced me to reevaluate some things. My issue with it fundamentally still is that the changes they've made, again, ostensibly because the community wanted them to make improvements, is that the changes they've made are exactly in the opposite direction from what the community was asking for. So instead of reintroducing this short, dynamic playstyle, they've introduced this long, complicated and convoluted approach where you never are quite sure which ability to use next, never quite sure what your best choice is. So it's I suppose it adds some complexity to the class, but it wasn't complexity that people were necessarily asking for. The 3rd post that John put up then related to the set bonus, particularly one of the challenges with the new playstyle of Annihilation Watchmen is that we have an inability to consistently use Ravage or Master Strike in a rotation. That ability triggers the 6-piece set bonus, which causes your next Annihilate or Merciless Slash to be a critical hit. So here we've created a situation now with this new playstyle where we can't really benefit, or it's much more difficult for us to benefit from the 6-piece set bonus. So there's obviously some disconnect there. So the third post also commented on the healing changes that have been made to Annihilation Watchmen. And basically, they think they buff the healing maybe in a PvP encounter where you manage to get dots on multiple targets, it's a buff. Otherwise, it's basically the same. So is that a beneficial, is that an improvement? I don't know. I think more testing would be required there. It's tough to test PvP on the PTS because you just don't have the players. So those 3 posts went up throughout the course of the day on Wednesday, I guess. Caused a lot of frustration. There was, I don't know exactly to what degree this ire went. I know I tried to be very civilized, and I posted some very choice words on the forums. People can still go see if they choose to. So I think we were all a little surprised, or at least I was surprised the next day, halfway through the day perhaps, when Musco posted about harassment of developers. And so John had been persecuted and targeted by a number of players for the post that he made on the forums. So that's a really interesting and sad reality. I'm not quite sure. So to be clear, some of the harassment extended to family members, and I'm not sure if there were threats. I guess I don't recall exactly what what infringements there were, but whatever it was, it's regrettable as a whole and embarrassing as well. So very disappointed to see that happen. I'm not sure to what degree it happened and what specifically happened, but anytime you're singling out a developer to target, and more importantly, the developer's family to target, that is just beyond acceptable or normal. So that happened, which I'm sure was very, people were very much aware of that. So
I guess, yeah. So just to be absolutely clear, that kind of behavior, and we've seen this happen generally on the internet, often involving women or whatever, minorities, where people are, it's just becoming more of a thing because it is possible with the internet and anonymity, where someone is doxxed and their actual real life address is published and their entire back history is researched and exposed, and their family is harassed, and yeah, it's just horrible. So that kind of behavior, there is no excuse. It doesn't matter what anyone does. No one should be subject to that kind of thing. And in many jurisdictions, that is actually illegal, and I personally would support those people who participate in that kind of activity being tracked down and persecuted to the full extent of the law, because that's just what you do. And this kind of behavior, no excuse. They're just completely beyond the pale.
Yeah, they might be. I wouldn't be surprised. I'd be surprised if BioWare didn't do at least a little research. At least get some letters. At least have some lawyers send those guys some letters at the very least.
Yes, and trying to say that BioWare brought this on by these posts is just bizarre. That's blaming the victim, and it's just crap.
Correct.
Now, let's just talk about the specifics here. John Jaranowski, we've been hearing about him recently as a public face of the combat team. I get the impression he's probably a junior member of the team. They brought him on, and he writes extremely well. And it's not him actually making these decisions. It's the combat team, and he is simply, which just makes this whole thing even stupider than it already is, really.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, back to you, Philip.
Well, so yes, I agree 100% with all of that, and in no way should any of this be sanctioned. I personally found the tone that John wrote these posts in to be pretty demeaning. So setting aside the learn to play post, which is debatable about how people can interpret it, but I'll be honest, the smug attitude that John seemed to adopt when crafting these posts did not seem to be the best approach. I would have thought that demonstrating some empathy with the community, saying, hey, we understand there's frustration, we're not ignoring it, we think these are problems as well, this is our idea on perhaps how to fix them to start, we'll continue to monitor the situation. So John didn't take that approach. He took a very different approach of stating this is what's going on, and in many ways I feel like ignored, whether it was intentionally or unintentionally, specific points that the community actually brought up. So I, for one, found the post to be insulting, which it certainly exacerbated the situation. Again, doesn't make it appropriate to do any of the things that happened, but it was disappointing that that's the way that the communication between a player base and the developers has gone.
And, well, as he says in his post at the end there, well, firstly, if this harassment continues or this kind of thing happens, it could be considered as a reason or an excuse to actually stop communicating in this fashion. And that would be extremely sad. And they are saying that quite explicitly. The alternative is to this open dialogue is they stay silent and they just make changes.
Mm-hmm.
And he does finish with saying there is unhappiness in the Sentinel Marauder community, and they genuinely want to continue having an open discussion with all of you, but it requires regular dialogue, respecting each other's opinions, and very importantly, not harassing anyone who's participating in the conversation, meaning players. So, but as we've
just to be clear, that was at the end of Eric's post that was written about the harassment. That wasn't on one of John's posts that had been written. So, just to be clear on that.
Yeah, and as we've long said, it's just kind of weird that people are making, and if you read these threads, you'll see it for yourself, good, logical, constructive criticism of the changes, but they don't seem to be responding to the points that are being raised. So there's anyone reading this just from the outside would wonder, are they actually paying any attention to what people are saying? Are they just skimming them and just there's some confirmation bias in what they're reading, and so they're missing the obvious? I mean, what's going on? And those posts, I don't see the condescension. I see a particular attitude and just a somewhat, let's say, clumsy way of and tone-deaf way of expressing the combat team's point of view. And it's clearly unwelcome in terms of what the community of Sentinels and Marauders actually want. So it's not the best. The harassment is just a really, really unfortunate consequence of this, which shouldn't have happened.
Yeah. So, in speaking to the perceived condescension in it, I think if we consider the posts that John in particular made on the PTS feedback threads as well. So the classic example I cite is the community kept requesting the return of Rupture to a 6-second dot, Rupture cauterized to a 6-second dot with a 15-second cooldown and a proc reset that happened. So they wanted the playstyle, or they wanted it similar to the 2.x playstyle. So great, it was clear that was. So in one of the changes, I think it was update 2 to the PTS, John's post says, hey, we've heard the feedback, or based on community feedback, we're making Rupture and Cauterize a 6-second dot. Full stop. So what about the other changes that the community had asked for? Were they not understood? Were they ignored? So that's where I think some of the frustration comes in. It was the change of a 6-second dot on that ability was part of one of part of a bigger change to the ability. They only adopted one of them, but they never made mention of why they didn't take the other suggestions into and adopt those. So I think that's an example where, so the community, are we being ignored? I mean, maybe we are. Maybe they missed it, misunderstood what was actually requested. I don't know. So again, this was coming to a head, I think, prior to the 3 posts that got made based on frustration with PTS testing. So yeah, it's a sad situation all around and for all parties involved, because this will do nothing to further or improve player to developer communication. So everyone suffers.
You can also make the argument that this particular response was not appropriate to harassment. This is kind of how I feel, but I don't know for sure whether it is, in that the last thing you ever want to do is give oxygen to the people who are doing the harassment, because that's the kind of attention-seeking they're actually going for. And so they should have said nothing about this. They should have just kept responding to the posts. But the harassment being done to John was obviously harsh. I mean, the poor guy, given what he was put through, he may actually end up leaving BioWare, which would be really unfortunate. So, yeah, this is Bill Bill Lentz, who's been on the show before. His thought was along the same lines. Should they have said anything? But there's also the point that Snave raises, where he said, I've lost it. Basing actions and tarring the whole community over the actions of the minority is crap. Because, yes, a few bad apples did this. The majority had nothing to do with it. It would never condone anything like that. So BioWare's communication strategy really should not be affected by a few people going too far.
Absolutely. I was going to say, too, along those lines, doxing in most MMOs is a big deal. It is it's real, and it is not looked upon lightly, and it is punished in most MMOs by things like permanent bans, and on top of that, sometimes legal action. And I do feel like it is interesting what you're saying there, Tio, is that BioWare seemed to have this kind of almost like overreaction to it instead of ignoring. Trolls need to be ignored. Yes, if you give a troll any attention, they're going to keep trolling. We've all learned that. I feel like BioWare needs to take harsh, extreme action, but they also need to dig deeper into the probably hundreds and thousands of complaints they've gotten from their user base about harassment in this game. We've heard a lot of stories here and elsewhere about harassment, serious harassment that happens in SWTOR. None of us really know what actions have or have not been taken, but I hopefully some good can come out of this, where when it actually happened to a guy at BioWare, as bad as it is, maybe they can kind of be like, oh, hold on, we need to look at harassment in the whole game and be serious, especially doxing, which again is, for those who don't know, that's when, as Tio said earlier, some real life information is presented, or somebody does something like post a link to your Facebook or something real life threat basically made in the game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've heard that as well. We have no facts or data on just what BioWare has done to deal with harassment of players. We only have anecdotes. So that doesn't really paint us a picture, but there are an awful lot of those anecdotes of people who are harassed and no action is taken.
Yes.
Or very little or trivial action, just temporary suspensions or whatever, and that person just comes back and goes back to harassing. Whether this will make a difference to that, I mean, that'd be nice if it came out of this, but it's a horrible way of going about it. Again, it shouldn't have come to that in the first place. Any more on this topic?
There's
Final
no good in
word.
continuing this conversation.
No. True enough. All right, so last in the news, I'll just mention something outside of SWTOR, but within Star Wars, Madame Tussauds in London. That is the Waxwork Museum. It's been around for many decades. That's where they have the most amazing lifelike wax figures. They are opening a Star Wars exhibit this Saturday, 16 May.
Sweet.
And there's a few journalistic outlets have had access to it, and they posted a few pictures. The one actually on the site, it's the Jabba the Hutt scene with Princess Leia in that famous outfit. It's just amazing.
Yeah, you know
Madame
what?
Tussauds.
Yeah, it's incredible.
I don't know
what
if
they can do.
I don't know if maybe they cropped this out, but apparently Leia's missing her bondage nexu. I don't see it anywhere in that shot.
If you happen to be in London, and if we do actually get out there for Star Wars Celebration UK next year, I'll certainly be going. Hopefully it's still there. They haven't said how long the exhibit will last. But if you do have the opportunity, this would be an amazing thing to see. Yeah. So anyway, Madame Tussauds in London. Next, just in community news, firstly, thanks to our, what we're calling our mega patron, Odysseus Crass gave us another rather large donation.
Nice.
Thank you. Yep, so anyway, and also thanks to our newest Utini patrons, Daniel and Descartes, and also Ufalong, who's one of our patrons. So you can find out more about that, utinicast.com/Patreon and patreon.com/UtiniCast. So I set all that up, so you can actually go via our site if you want. There's also a link. And I'll mention our $100 milestone goal. For those who are contributing or donating outside of Patreon, let's just say the $100 milestone will actually probably trigger the milestone before we get to $100, is what it boils down to, especially with Odysseus Cross giving us rather large chunks of money. So anyway, that $100 milestone is we will create a Utini documentary. And Ari is already, as I've mentioned, getting to work on that. We have some rather cool ideas for it. Chill has already been digging into the archive.
Yes.
Yes. So, yeah, one idea was to actually get Hip to do the voiceover for it, if he's willing, just to record it.
Yes, if Morgan Freeman's not available, then HIP would definitely work.
Indeed. So anyway, that should be, once we get there, $100 per episode, or slightly under, I won't say how much, that should happen. And finally, in community news, farewell to ToroCast.
Oh.
They are finally going away. This is due to Rode, who is officially the last ever host. That was a deal when he took over from with Sam Money. He is going to pursue, well, he's actually moving across country, and as part of that, he's going to have to cease podcasting for a few months. We talked about this on the Galactic Gamers Coalition. They announced it on a recent ToroCast, and I believe there's only 1 or 2 episodes remaining. They're going to try and, I haven't actually listened to the very latest, the one that I recorded but have not released yet. So, yeah, anyway, ToroCast will be done. Still the longest running SWOTOR podcast, and I think the next one is like a year behind that, so at least for now. And the episode that prior to the one that has been released, there was some really interesting stuff to discussed on that, particularly by SWOTOR Miner talking about the desync issue, which Fridge from Death and Taxes did a video on. Now, desyncing is when the client gets confused about where your character is actually located as far as the game is concerned. So your game client shows you somewhere, but and the way you interact with the environment, it appears that you're not actually where the game thinks you are, or where you seem to be. And as we've talked about before, the best solution to that, at least in raid encounters, is jumping. So where the circle appears underneath you, jump. And that seemed to fix it. Anyway, thanks to the work of SWOTOR Potato, a fellow data miner, who was actually doing some packet inspection.
Wow.
Yeah, don't do that, kids, because that's bad. Well,
Except for when you do. Don't do it except for when you do it.
What he discovered was when you start moving, packets indicating the change in your position are not sent from your client to the server for at least, well, it varied between 750 milliseconds and 1.25 seconds. So 3/4 of a second to 1.25 seconds delay between when you start moving and when the game, as in the server, which is actually doing all the real calculations, thinks that you did. So that just shouldn't happen. They were theorizing it was a Nagel algorithm, which makes more efficient use of the network, but by delaying packets until you get a certain number before it pushes them out, maybe. It could just be a bug in the game. However, he did discover that if you jump, that is always sent immediately and will trigger the flow of packets. So if you want to be sure, you could jump and then jump in whatever direction and then start moving. That would work to let the game know immediately. He also discovered, SWOTOR Potato also discovered that any ability, it doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter if it's even working, as in it may be on cooldown or whatever, if you just hit it a couple of times, they will do exactly the same thing. So start moving, hit something, doesn't matter what, like a melee ability, if you're back, it doesn't matter. That will have the same effect. So if you want the game to know what you're doing, that's how you work it. But if you just move and do nothing else without a jump, the game will be like a second behind. So yeah, very nice work by those guys.
Yeah. Wow.
Also wanted to draw attention to the work that they're doing on TorCommunity.com. They are reproducing the TorHead database for items, abilities, missions. They're doing it all. They're doing their own mining, obviously, of the data. So if anything, it's a lot better and up to date based on the information in the game files. So
it's a great UI. Yeah, great UI too. Those guys are heroes.
Yes, they are. Anyway, that's the news.
All right, that'll bring us to the force feedback where we read out your tweets and emails. And to the chat room, if you have any questions to ask, we'll gather them now to answer once we're done with the feedback. And since I didn't do it earlier, let me go ahead and give a shout out to the chat room. Darth Brundlefly is here, Alien D, Force Chuckles here, Gas Guy. Our guests are here, of course. Neptune, Snave1208 is here, Barryman, Bruce Campbell is lollygagging here. People who follow him on Twitter will get that. Dekion is here, Dread is here, Gahana, Helion, Kanathrak, Palace, Zamzam, the PvPer is here. Beware2 is here as well. And we also have from the From the Twitch stream, Dark Edge Gaming, Shingara, Dynamite Zeddy. Let's see, who else? Anyone else? And that'll do. All right, thanks. Thanks for coming, everyone. And let's see what we've got here. Tweet here from Telcho Libre. Best opener ever. BDW for the win.
I had to think about that for a second. Billy D. Williams, because you
Billy
used
D. Williams.
the Lando quote.
Yes, from last week.
That was good.
Yes.
Nice.
Oh, thanks.
Oh yeah, you even had the gate. It was like, hello there. I can't do it. You did it perfect.
Right. I can only do.
Is BDW a thing? Like I'd heard like NPH or whatever, but I didn't realize BDW was a thing.
Yeah, I know. You have to really love Billy D. Williams. Drink those 40s.
And from the Twitch chat, Cerberush and Tank Mike Golf say they're here too.
Hi guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Tank Mike and Cerberush. All right, Zamzam tweeted, I really like the constructive criticism of SWTOR on OotiniCast. Great listen today. Thank you, Zamzam. SWTOR Minor wrote, let's see, workaround for desync issues besides jumping, hitting an ability more than once seems to update your position immediately. Thank Potato. Okay, so that was from the previous talk that you were saying, Tio. And that's interesting. So if one jump, but also two abilities will do the same thing.
Yes.
But it has to be two, or more than once, rather.
In rapid succession, yes.
Pop. Okay.
Can I give a shout out to Zamzam too? I think, and Tio, you can confirm that it was Zamzam, but put out that great article about Lord Scourge. And if was it Zamzam who did that? I'm pretty sure it was.
I think so. And she was talking about it was just a overall lore post about Xyl specifically.
If you're into lore and you're into the stories that have happened that we've all been going through, she talks about. Forgive me if it's just the wrong article, but it talks about Lord Scourge. Why is Lord Scourge not in this big story about Revan and this big story about the Emperor? Just go read it.
Was a post, and it's a really, really good question.
It's great. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, and I actually listened to Star Wars: The Old Republic Revan on Audible again this week during work, so it was a lot of fun. Of course, Lord Scourge is an important character in that novel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's actually a good one. It's probably my second favorite of the Star Wars: The Old Republic novels. I like Deceived. It's probably my favorite. But and, behind that is the Revan one.
Remember that, just to say one more thing about this, remember that there was the big Shadow of Revan release press conference in which they gave everybody those books, the Revan book. And, I mean, everybody freaked out, was all excited about the lore. And a big part of that Revan book is Lord Scourge and all the stuff that happens. And then they go and make this whole expansion, and he's not even in it. So I don't understand. Whatever. Still cool, but come on.
All right. SWTOR Addict wrote, about the /stuck issue mentioned in episode 204, the simplest fix is to use the /sit emote X first if you're in a moving state. So that will sometimes work, apparently. Nice.
Cool.
I didn't know that.
All right.
All right. That might be a good one, especially if it's the kind where you're stuck mostly where it thinks you're falling. Maybe it'll help with that one. I'll have to try that next time I get stuck. I'll try to remember /sit. Let's see. Elion D wrote, I notice the site no longer tells you how many... Let's see, this is from last week, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Did we actually
that's
answer
right.
it?
Yeah, that's what it was. We have an answer. So just read the question.
All right. Yeah, following up from last week, Elion D wrote, I notice the site no longer tells you how many monthly cartel coins you get depending on what subscription and features you have. Did they change the amount, and is there anywhere to get this info without writing in or submitting a support request?
And I did find it in the Help Center. So yes, they are still giving out cartel coins with the subscription. And looking at the Help Center on SWTOR.com post, it's pretty much the same as ever. 500 for a 30-day sub, 550 for a 90-day, and 600 for the 180-day. And if you get the 60-day game card, you get 525 each, and that is per month. That you're subscribed or whatever.
Okay. Does it also tell you about your security key bonus?
That would be somewhere else in the Help Center. I'll address that next week.
Okay. Because as far as I know, that you still get some coins for the security key as well.
I believe it is 100 still. Oh yeah, actually, now that you mention that, the security key grant is every 30 days, and it is still 100 coins for having a security key attached to your account. So yes.
Nice.
All right. Cool. Kranitoko wrote in, you're not ready for another Hypercrate video for Deep Core Explorers packs, right? You are? Okay then. And he has a link to his YouTube video.
There it
I can't
is.
believe I missed one. I'm going to watch it. I must have missed that day when it came out, because I always keep an eye out for his, and I'll definitely go back and watch that.
That must be the one where he gets the extra,
That
the
extra
platinum.
purple one, yeah. It must be. Oh, those are always fun. So, let's
Totally.
see. Dynamite Zeddy on Reddit wrote, this is going to be a response referencing that other MMO bit, but here goes. Speaking about what Bill was saying about a quality of life for finding items across characters, I know WoW has an add-on. I think it's an add-on for inventory bags that has a functionality that allows you to hover over an item, and at the bottom of the tooltip there's text that tells you who else has that item. For example, if you hover over an item, like a first aid kit, it tells you character X2 in bags. It also works with gold and items from a vendor menu, including tokens. I'd love to see something like this in SWTOR. I know it may be an unpopular opinion to have, but I really do like the pet battling in World of Warcraft. I think it adds a fun new aspect to the game. They can even do as Blizzard has done and go add some pets to older content to add some replay value to old flashpoints and ops, and it will certainly appeal to some people who enjoy that sort of thing in games. I find myself being more of a mount pet title and now decoration collector. I'm not sure how they could do it, but it would be pretty fun to see. Another great show, guys. Congratulations to Chill on getting the statue. I'll have to continue my journey. Hope renewed.
There's light at the end of the tunnel. In theory.
Yes, I do remember there were some several atoms, I think, but kind of a main one that whenever you would log on to a character, it would remember everything in your bags and in your bank and so on, and they would add it to a database so that when you went to another character, it could then give you that information on the tooltip. That's sort of how that worked.
Mm.
But yeah, it was pretty slick. It's pretty dang slick. Yeah, I would love to see that too. I don't foresee it, but I would really like it. I think.
Yeah.
Let's see. Ash wrote, really enjoyed the GGC. Already looking forward to the next one. Yes, I listened to it this week too. It was good.
Well, you're going to be hosting the next one, Shell, so you won't miss that one. And
I
that
will
should
not
be
miss that one.
early June.
Yes, yeah, it's just a few weeks out. Let's see. Darklighter wrote in, the ultimate agent. He has a screenshot of him. His gun's visible, but nothing else is.
Well,
That's
perfect. Yeah.
I had the opposite bug not too long ago when I was leveling my trooper. The gun was invisible, so you could actually see like the flame shooting out, or the lightning rather, but there was no actual gun. He was just holding his hands in that posture.
And here's one where he's actually mounted, and you still can't see him, but all you can see is the mount. And of course, the mount he's chosen is that god awful freebie from the other day. So it's like he is the mount. That's excellent.
The bobsled. I call that one the bobsled. Yeah, that one. That one's a fun one. All right, Kuze wrote in. Let's see, Bumfudge from the Hates Your Face Guild said, keep up the great work, and thanks you for the time you put in for the community.
Now, I thought this was a joke, so I made sure that Bumfudge is actually a real character, and the Hates Your Face Guild is very much real on the Harbinger, so there you go.
Excellent.
There you go.
I thought Kuze was just trolling us.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of is anyway.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
Well
thank
done.
you, Bumfudge.
Let's see. Cal wrote in, but I'm not on Ilum, and he has a screenshot. I'm trying to.
Beastmaster of Ilum, and looks like he's on Alderaan.
Beastmaster of Ilum on Alderaan.
That's a bit weird. I think Gaskai mentioned this somewhere in his spreadsheet or somewhere. But yes.
Yeah, I think the idea is that there are creatures that you can get the achievement from different planets, and Ilum's not the only place. And so if you happen to get it on happen to kill it on another planet, then it gives you the achievement no matter where you are.
Yeah, I think there's even a situation where, in some cases, like for instance, you can find those Charlotte Panthers, I think, on Quesh, but killing one there won't give you the achievement. You have to kill it on another planet to get the achievement.
Oh man.
Same
Yeah, it looks like this one was the Cath Hound. That looks like a Cath Hound in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Billy Sy wrote, "Is there going to be a nightlife event again? We are seeing nightlife cartel packs, so I was wondering if the event is coming back soon." Yeah, good point.
Well, they said it's yearly, so it should be back whenever it was on last year. When was it on?
Let's see.
Towards the end of the
Few
year,
months
wasn't it?
Yeah, towards the end of the year, but not at the end of the year. So a few months out, I would guess.
Wait, the nightlife, the gambling thing with cartel?
Yep.
The gambling one, yeah.
Well, the summer was like from June to August or something, wasn't it?
There you go.
Was it that
so
long?
it should be back in.
Okay.
Should be back in summer.
Could be back soon.
Or
Oh no!
winter for
I
us.
know I'll be right back in there. Oh God! Please no.
I know. Yeah.
Let's see. AJ wrote, "Got this strange in-game mail on SWTOR. It was a mission item tied to my class story, but I didn't actually need it." And he has a link of it. It says, "From Star Wars The Old Republic, subject, item recovery. We've detected that the character has been affected by an issue where the character load that resulted in the game needing to grant or return items to the character attached in the email is the associated item. We apologize for any inconvenience this may have caused."
Or not caused, as the case may be. So they're just
Right.
erring on the side of caution where they detected that there may have been an error state due to probably a crash or something, and so they'll just give you the item. That's kind of cool.
I've had that happen to me too. Yeah. I don't remember if I needed the item or not. I don't think I did, but yeah, I've had a message like that before. So it's just nice. It's nice to know that they have that set up so that you don't get completely stuck, especially on a class mission. Oh my God, what a nightmare! Whenever on the few rare instances where you have like a class mission stuck and you can't progress, it doesn't happen. It hasn't happened for a long time for me, but it was shortly after launch. I think it was the last time I had an issue, but it's a pain. All right, and let's see. We've got some stuff for Oofalong to go over.
Yeah, so let me just introduce. So last week mainly me, expressed my opinion about certain progression guilds, such as Zor's, and it turns out Death and Taxes as well. For the majority are moving on to other things. And Oofalong had some points to make.
Some points to make. So I sent, after I heard the last episode, I sent Tio an email with a subject line, "Time for some tough love." So I opened the email by saying, "I was surprised and disappointed by the dismissive discussion regarding Zor's departure from SWTOR. I had come to expect better from OotiniCast." So while I won't read the rest of the email, there are a couple important points that I think are worth noting. So the first was, and I really wrote to correct what I perceived to be an error, was the insinuation that in the discussion last time was that Zor's was leaving because they were all suspended as a result of exploiting the new Monolith boss. And I'm very confident in saying that that's not true. I don't believe that that certainly wasn't the guild that had claimed to world first on it. Zor's did. Milas from Zor's did post some screenshots that others had taken, or he had tweeted about them, and so maybe there was some confusion as to who the actual culprits were. But I'm very confident in saying that nobody from Zor's, and particularly the leadership, did not participate in killing the Monolith early to get 204 main hands. So that was certainly one point I absolutely wanted to clarify.
All right, so just to be clear, that was kind of an attempt at humor. It was
tongue-in-cheek.
A little bit flat, so yes, we apologize. That was absolutely not a serious accusation.
Right. No, it was fine. But the next thing that I think is really important, from my understanding of the testing that happened for 3.0, there were a number of progression guilds who supported or tested the new operations to help BioWare refine and improve them and make sure that they were, up to be released, ready to be released for the community to enjoy. And from what I understand, Zor's was the most active, the most vocal, and the most involved of these guilds. I think you used to be able to stream privately but now they couldn't. So from what I understand, they had sent a number of hours of video of their raids to the devs to look at. They had traded one-on-one emails with the devs about how some of the mechanics worked and what was going on. So, and I know there were other guilds who participated in this as well, or at least I believe there were other guilds that were participating in this as well. But from what I understand, Zors, more than any other guild, was responsible for doing the bulk of the testing of the content for 3.0. And before somebody claims that, oh my god, Zors is terrible, they made it so hard for us, I want to clarify that from what I understand, the content was already hard. It was Zors who was trying to help clarify how it should actually work and to help BioWare work through some of the bugs. So the level of difficulty isn't at all attributable to Zors.
Sure.
That was something the developers had already designed. So I think that the testing that happens on the PTS, there's an interesting debate about how much of it is how much player testing was required versus how much the devs should be able to test their own thing. And I think that's a separate debate. I think we could discuss that for hours on end. So it won't delve further into that. But the reality that we're in right now is the developers rely on a PTS environment. Players log in and test content and provide feedback. I mean, that's where we are. That's what happens now. So, and Zors played an integral role in the testing of the operations for 3.0. So I don't want that contribution and the contribution of other guilds to be overlooked or ignored, because those progression guilds are always willing to get in and try something new. So certainly from that perspective, Zors made a number of contributions. The other thing that I think progression guilds...
Sorry.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm just going to say that all that's true, but they have the best motive is that by getting in there and helping to test, they're ready to conquer the world first, or attempt world first. I've heard Fridge from Death and Taxes explicitly state that it's... And you can't blame them. It makes perfect sense, and having progression groups doing that, it really is the perfect storm as far as BioWare is concerned. They can actually get the people in, they have a motive to learn the fights, and help them debug them, help them debug them, which is great. And if the progression guilds are moving on, so they're not going to be there anymore, then who's going to do it? It's a good question.
Right. No, it is good. And you raise another interesting topic, which I think could go on for hours, which is, what is the progression race in SWTOR? What does it mean to see the fights early versus just everybody seeing it at the same time? That's, again, a whole separate issue that it's worth delving into perhaps at a future time. But, yes, there's truth to the fact that people get to see it earlier, and so they can use that to expedite their clears of the content when the operations actually make it to live. So the other point that I wanted to make was the progression guilds, and raiders in particular, make a great number of contributions to the community. So I can specifically cite Marisi, I'm hopefully not pronouncing that wrong, from Zors, created the Parsley, parser, the website that you can go and upload your information to, your combat logs to. Prior to this, I think the most common online parsing tool was TorParse, and that still exists from what I understand now, although I'm not sure that it's used nearly as much. As somebody who has spent a lot of time parsing logs, hand parsing logs, TXT files, putting it into Excel or into some type of formula or format that you can actually read and digest it and analyze what's happening, what Marisi has done with Parsley is phenomenal. The amount of time that she invested in it and really digging into what happens in combat it's just excellent. It is such a great tool, and I'm not sure that the average community member appreciates all that there is. So, for instance, there are a lot of specs that you get a buff. Maybe it's for, or we'll just talk about the proc relics. So we've got all these different power proc, primary stat proc relics. In the calculation of the parser, it'll actually tell you what your overall uptime was on that relic. This was one way that people were able to discover that one of the resurrected relics was bugged and allowing a higher uptime from healing and damage. So there's that level of information that was previously so inaccessible, even with a place like TorParse, that Parsley is just such a great tool, and it's used by a lot of people. And it's a great tool for people to improve and to look at their rotations, look at their disciplines, compare to what the best players are doing with it. So the value of that alone is excellent. So I think that's a great manifestation. Another one, Ixale, who created StarParse, is now a member of Zor's. Previously, when he created Star Parse, he wasn't necessarily. He was just doing other ratings. But that mindset that Zor's had attracted him, and he wanted to be a part of that community, and it was conducive to his time. So he went over and did that. So again, you've got a great in-game parser. And what I think it makes this the best in-game parser that's out there is the pre-built timers. So when you go into an operation in a boss encounter, it's already set up to tell you this mechanic is going to happen in X number of seconds. So while that functionality may have existed in previous examples of parsers, it wasn't as user-friendly. So those tools were set up and are great examples of cutting-edge tools that the PvE and PvE community use, and they were created by progression raters. They were created by people in that small community who want to clear content, who want to be able to claim those world firsts. I can also throw out that the first parser that was commonly used in Star Wars: The Old Republic, the Mox desktop parser, was again created by a progression rater, Memories of Zender, Mox Guild. There's some more backstory in that one, which talk about at another time. But so I know there have been other contributions from other community members, other sites, other parsers, but there, so if we were to just say that right now, 50% of the tools, third-party tools to support SWTOR have come from the progression rating community. So for the departure of Zor's, Death and Taxes, and all of these progression guilds to now be leaving, that community is being decimated to some degree. And so I would expect any contributions to really be pretty minimal going forward from that community. And if they were responsible for 50% of the contributions previously, their departure is a big deal, in my opinion.
Yeah, makes sense. Emphasizing the contributions. Obviously, there are people in the community who are contributing who aren't progression raters, but as you said, a good chunk of them, especially the guides, class guides, and operation guides, certainly have come from the better raters. So the question is, by losing this sort of the cream of the crop, who do seem to be producing a lot of that stuff, will other people step up or not? I don't know. I'm thinking they will, and maybe the guides will be more suited to the closer to average players, because I know some of those Zor's guides, they're fine, but they're also geared towards the best, and there's a bunch of, and we found ourselves when applying those guides that they get stuff wrong, they avoid certain things because it just never, those guys never happen to them. But for us mere mortals, we actually do. There are mechanics which come up. So, yes, I guess my feeling is other people will step in. But
So
as you
let
say,
me-
there is now a vacuum.
Let me challenge that, just from firsthand experience and something that I was intimately involved in. So the creation of Zor's happened as a result of the disbanding of the guild Hatred on Harbinger. As you may know, Dolphy was a member of the Hatred Guild. It was through her raiding experience with Hatred that Dolphy was able to create the guides prior to Nightmare Dread Palace.
Sure.
Hatred disbanded in the middle of Nightmare Dread Fortress. So I know, because I was raiding with Dolphy at the time, she was a member of my guild at the time and raiding with us, throughout the entire Nightmare DP process, where we struggled with roster issues and actually forming a viable raid team, there were no guides that were published for Nightmare Dread Palace. The only guide that's on our website still is from the one time that one of the early kills that we had of Nightmare Bestia. So if you want to go back and watch that, you can see Oofalong in there, as well as others. But the point being, I'm not sure others will step up. And while some of the people who could have stepped up, whether it was a Death and Taxes, Hates You is another example, my guild, Chandrian, just lost a core raid team here because of the same realities that are affecting these other progression guilds. So I'm not sure that the vacuum is so easy to fill. I don't disagree that people won't try, but I'm not sure that it will be easy to do.
Mm-hmm. And can we agree that it seems like the community seems to agree that there is no nightmare coming?
That seems to be the gist. And when there is a nightmare, no nightmare guides probably means that not a lot of people were doing nightmare content. There was the cream of the crop who was certainly doing it. It doesn't matter. So
Right.
the alternative that they've described I'll just mention a Death and Taxes video, the last State of the Galaxy, number 16, I think. There was an excellent discussion on there where they talk through all of this, the reasons why they're moving on, And even though there was one guy who was talking way too much and kept interrupting the others, for the most part it was a good discussion and really does lay it out. So they were very honest about themselves and what was going on. BioWare's direction for the game, like for the raids, this tier of content, they called it Hardmare, so it's like a harder version of hard mode that isn't Nightmare mode, and seems appropriate. They also, and this was a very real trend that seems that all of us are observing, their focus on story, which they said they were going to do this year, is sort of turning Star Wars: The Old Republic into a single-player MMO. And if you look at the story content, even the fact that it forces you to, you can't go into it within a group, those various story phases, you actually have to go in by yourself. Or go in twice if two people in a group want to each experience it themselves.
Well, if I can chime in on that real quick, I'd heard that mentioned earlier this week as well. It's actually not true when it comes to that GSI mission that's instanced. There's that one GSI mission with the droid, and I heard some people saying the same thing earlier this week, but it's actually, I did go in there with just a buddy somebody I met on Zyos, so you can go in there with a friend. I'm not sure about the other instances, but, and I want to chime in further to say, as somebody who loves single-player stuff generally, I want to make it clear that, and I hope BioWare knows this, that even those who tend to play a lot of stuff by themselves and solo a lot and altaholics, etc., I aspire to being in a good raid group. Yeah. And I love that group content because it's so fun, it's so cool and different compared to solo stuff. So that group content is like critical coming from someone who loves the story. And if it wasn't there, I mean, that's why in-game is so important. Everybody wants to have something cool and fun to do at the end game. So I hope they know that I think even most of the single-player type, KOTOR lover people who loved KOTOR, they also want to raid too.
And yeah, that's true. And as I've said this last week and the week before, I think with the Zyos, you get through the content in maybe an hour or two at most if you really stretch it out, and then it's done. And yes, the single-player the story-based content is fantastic, but it's not repeatable. Right. Raid content, especially challenging raid content, for most of us, actually does take a while to get through. So we want that. And while the story focus is nice and all, it's not enough. Not by itself. Not without repeatable content.
Yeah. I just wanted to comment. So there's a great discussion around this player base, the progression rating community, is a difficult segment to satisfy. They consume content at an above-average rate. That's an absolutely worthwhile discussion to have. Again, I don't think that's... I mean, we can discuss it now, but it's a lengthy discussion as well. So great to be able to point that out and say, they always move on from game to game or whatever. That's all true and fine to discuss at a later point. The one point, I guess, the reason that it prompted me for the email is fundamentally the entire SWTOR community comprises multiple different segments. And what I found troubling about the last comments on the OotiniCast was that one segment was unappreciative or, didn't recognize another segment's feelings, sentiments, whatever. So, I'll give another example. I don't RP for anything. And so if I were to sit here and say, I can't believe all these changes they're making for RP players are stupid, they're wasting their time, this is ridiculous. Like, I don't feel like I'm really have a perspective to offer on that. So, I don't know. I guess the point I'm just making is, like, we should not be critical of what the requests or the discontent of other segments of the community are, because they may very well be legitimate. And even if you're not a member of that community, which, let's be honest, we're all kind of in our own pocket, we should be respectful of what some other segment of the community, what their grievances are, and what they would like to see changed to improve to the game. And that was specifically why I said I thought OotiniCast has done a pretty good job of kind of presenting that, recognizing that, hey, you guys are in one subset of the community. There are others that are out there who are not represented on a routine basis in the OotiniCast. But, I always hear the phrases, your mileage may vary, or, it's not your cup of tea, that type of stuff. That's great. You just be mindful and respectful that there are other segments who have differing opinions or perspectives or directions they'd like to see the game go. And rather than criticizing one another, we should look to find common ground wherever possible. I suppose would be the fun, happy way of bringing closure to that topic.
That's a fair point. And I guess the only variant on that would be, yes, absolutely true, that is certainly what we aspire to, but we're also talking about a minority who are leaving the game. So maybe that did kind of play into my own personal reaction to it as well. They're basically going home, so to speak, packing up their toys and pissing off, and yep. So
Yeah. Oh, fair point. They're leaving the community, so should their opinion matter as much? Then, fair point.
True.
Yeah.
It's clear that those guys love Star Wars though, and as much as
And don't we all?
almost as much as they love MMOs. So I bet you, I mean, I'd be excited and not surprised to see if they see them come back at the next tier and give it another go. Let's hope for that.
Yeah, and it's not like we don't want them back. They'd be obviously welcome, and we would love to see them again. And so, who knows, once more challenging content, assuming the direction changes a little bit, and they come back, wonderful. All right, let's wrap it up. We've been going for nearly 2 hours.
Okay. All right. What about Melissa's parting words? Have we discussed that? Okay.
Don't worry about it. We'll link to it.
All right. All right, then, that's the show. If you'd like to play with us in the Utini Knights Guild on the Republic side of the Harbinger server, or in our
Utini Rage
Guild on the Empire side, do /C join Utini to join the Utini channel. Then ask for the quiz that lets us know you're a fan of the show. You can email questions and comments about the show to utinicast@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter using @UtiniCast. You can find contact details for all of us on our website, utinicast.com, which includes how to subscribe to us using iTunes, Stitcher, and the rest. We record the show live every Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. Pacific. Go to utinicast.com/live to find out how to join in. Our theme song is from Mevio's Musicality. Check it out at music.mevio.com. That's MEVIO. And thank you to the chat room. And thanks to Ivalon and Oofalong. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. That was a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and we'll see you next week.
See you in game.
All right, guys, keep recording, please. Don't stop. And we'll stop the broadcast in a second. Thank you all for listening. That was I enjoyed that discussion, actually. It was good to have those points raised. Anyway, all right, we'll see you next week. Utini War Room number 6 should be out sometime after we release this show, so on the weekend probably. I know they did record, in fact, Snave and Busy, Jacket, and Turg. I don't know if Pez actually was on there. They talked for 3 hours. I don't know how they managed it, but anyway, we'll cut that down to size. Yeah, anyway, we'll talk to you next week.
Awesome.